Is it time for a name shift? If you don't know what that means, then join me, your host, Dr. Clint Haycock, on the Dismantling Doctrine podcast. Formerly known as the Mind Shift podcast, it's time for a change. And if you're someone who's looking to rebuild their life after dismantling whatever doctrine may have controlled you, then this show is for you. Hey everyone, welcome to this edition, a bonus edition here on the Dismantling Doctrine podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Clint Haycock, and in this episode, I'm bringing you a conversation I had recently with my very good friend, Reverend Dr. Sheri Pallas, and we are talking about her brand new book that just came out on the 2nd of May, 2024. It's called We Have Ruined God, My Journey Out of Religion and Into Unconditional Love, which is now available on Amazon. And I will put the link to that in the show notes if you want to have a look at the book. It sounds like a fantastic book. I haven't read it yet, but she's just sent me a copy. And just reading from the Amazon description, we're going to get into the book obviously a lot more in this episode. I'm just going to let this play because I don't want to stop it. But it says, quote, an irreverent expose uncovering the flaws and manipulations in religious doctrines. We Have Ruined God is a candid and thought-provoking narrative. It invites the reader to participate in a journey of self-discovery and healing from religion-induced trauma. The book highlights the hypocrisy, misogyny, and toxic elements woven into many religious teachings. At the same time, it provides a clarity and a path to spiritual fulfillment in a world clouded by agenda-driven teachings. The truth does set you free, end quote. So that's just a little bit of what you can expect in this episode here, talking with my good friend Dr. Sheri Pallas about her new book. But before we get into that, I just want to mention really quickly that this Sunday coming up on the 26th of May, we are having our very last Dismantling Doctrine Zoom call. That's going to be with Anna and Carrie Joe of the Heretical Hippies podcast, and that episode just dropped the other week. So if you want to meet up with Anna and Carrie Joe for about an hour, we're going to have a fantastic conversation. This is for Patreon supporters of the show. You get exclusive access to these calls, which we do once a month. And as I say, this is going to be the last one before the summer break. We had Ren Story come on last month. That was a great chat catching up with her. So if you want to be a part of that call, you can get on it now. There's still time. If you want to support the show as well on Patreon, as always, the links to that are in the show notes. So let's get into this discussion with my good friend, Dr. Sheri Pallas, about her new book, We Have Ruined God, My Journey Out of Religion and Into Unconditional Love. I'm super happy to be catching back up with my very good friend, Dr. Sheri Pallas, here on the newly named Dismantling Doctrine podcast. So welcome, Sheri.
Oh, Clint, it is so good to be back. I have to tell you that you were my first podcast that I had ever done all those years ago.
That's amazing.
And now you're my first podcast for the book release. So it's all very cool.
It's all coming full circle, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about your new book. I mean, I remember we talked a while ago and you had this whole thing going, you called it Man Has Ruined God. You've obviously stayed on that theme. Let's talk about your new book. What's it called and when's it coming out, first of all?
It comes out next Thursday, May 9th. It's Amazon kind of forced the ebook release, so you can get it on ebook now. But at the bookstores, libraries, full release on Amazon, all happens next Thursday, May 9th.
Wow, that's dropping soon. And what's it called? It's called We Have Ruined God?
We Have Ruined God. There was a lot of kickback, a lot of people taking it personally as far as man, and I meant mankind.
Humanity.
None of that worked for a snappy title for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so, mankind or humanity, it just didn't work. But it used to be, Man Has Ruined God, My Journey Out of Religion and Into the Arms of God. And that was also a problem because that's humanizing God, which I no longer believe. That's putting God into a being, which I no longer believe. So switching it up to We Have Ruined God, my journey out of religion and into unconditional love.
That's a better title. Yeah, I think so.
It is. Yeah.
Because I'm about to release my book, hopefully in the next few months, and we've gone through title changes and all that. Same exact thing. What I thought was a great title turns out, according to my editor, not so good on Amazon. And that's the key thing, is that you want something that is going to be, okay, people see that title and go, okay, that sounds fascinating. I want to read that book. And that sounds like a fascinating title, what you've come up with.
Well, thank you. Another problem that I had in going through it was I kind of took the, the patriarchy, men have ruined everything. You all have been in charge all this time. So even if you do take it personally, so what? But then someone approached me and said, but 72% of all followers of religion are women. So that made it an easy transition to, okay, it's not all inclusive, because, people have come to me and said, I didn't have any part of this. There's no all in anything in our existence. So, it's looking at the people who have bought into this. And I was one of them. So, I was the one sitting there going, no, the Bible is inerrant. It's never been disproven. And I'm just simply a better person now that I left religion. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And that's just, kind of insane.
That is, the irony is, we've said this so many times before, but what religion promised us, Christianity. I mean, I'm an ex-evangelical. I was raised in it, and all that. Man, it promised everything, and it was all good, but somehow it failed to deliver, so it just never seemed to live up to its promises.
Well, and what started this book was a complaint letter. I had reached out to the church and asked for my grandson to be dedicated. And they judged him. He was 1 year old. And they said, because his parents aren't married, because he was conceived in sin, we will not pray for this child, which just sent me over the edge.
I can imagine.
So that is what started the book, and in the last week, I've been trying to do a video for the book as a promotion type thing. And I had this whole thing planned out where I was going to sit in a pew and walk out of the church and all of this stuff. And then I realized that at least here, like 99% of the churches are closed. There's here they have 8-foot wrought iron fence tops with spikes. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, what are you doing? You have this giant property. One boasts that it's 42 acres, and there's homeless people surrounding these buildings, but yet show up on Sunday and make a tithe and you can get in. I mean, what more antichrist is that? Like, your doors are closed. You have all of these rooms open. There are 42,000 homeless people in LA right now. And these buildings with rooms and acreage and all of this stuff, their doors are locked.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's just the epitome of the book. It's just the epitome of the book. It's like, this is all wrong. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So is that the core thesis of the book? I mean, take us through the actual argument of how have we, humanity, whatever that means, how have we ruined God? What exactly does that mean? Or what do you mean by it? Maybe it's a better question.
So I found through my research and studies, I focused on the things that affected me: misogyny, racism, the patriarchy, cruelty to animals, science. So there's different sections within the book that address these. And then there's chapters within those. So I address sin and break down everything that has been labeled, like I address the 10 Commandments and what they originally meant, like taking the Lord's name in vain. Did not mean cursing or anything like that. It was using God as your witness, saying, I swear to God. The bullshit laws.
You can swear, yeah.
Okay.
You won't be judged for that, Sheri.
Yeah. Well, I do say that if cursing is a sin, then that just makes God a snob.
Exactly.
But,
yeah, we're all screwed, I think.
Right?
I know I am.
Yeah, I talk about how I was affected by this dogma that was built on all of the atrocities of humanity, like the patriarchy, like racism, like all of those things. And we used God to justify our atrocities. More people have been killed in the name of God than all natural disasters combined. So I take that information that is used to be the foundation of those atrocities and basically blow it up. So I dispel all of the homosexuality is an aberration type things. I dispel where we are the kings of the planet, and therefore all of the animals are our slaves, and we can just go ahead and shoot them if they misbehave. Those types of things. So my hope is that it will eliminate a lot of shame in people when they realize why this dogma is there and that it is based purely on us, not any supreme being, not anything. It's just a social construct. And if it's just a social construct, it should not issue in shame. It should not divide families. It should not do all that. It should unite in love.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying essentially that all these things, these movements and all that, they can be traced back to religion somehow or a doctrine? That's kind of sounds like what I hear you saying. All these things, the way we treat other people, the planet,
totally,
animals, and all that. Not necessarily related to Christianity, although you could probably find a lot of those in evangelicalism, can't you? But I'm thinking all religions, they've got something to blame here.
Totally. And I stress in the book starts off as kind of like a memoir. It's, how I got here. This is where I'm coming from. And then the second section is why I wrote this book. So it talks about how while my degree is in comparative religion. So while I discuss all the religions and I focus primarily on Christianity because that's my foundation, I am still, even after 25 years, viewing other religions through an evangelical mind. I think that I've peeled away all of those layers, but the reader will see as they go through, I haven't. Like, I really mentally struggled with 330 million gods in Hinduism. I could not even get my evangelical brain around that for a really long time. It was like, wait a minute, there has to be an alpha. There has to be, where is this?
Supreme being in there somewhere.
Yeah. And in stepping out of my evangelical mind and realizing they had 330 million gods because it's an individual belief, because it's a democracy of faiths. There's no mine is better than yours. Showed me a beauty I had never seen in evangelicalism.
That's fascinating. When you start studying other religions, and the irony is these other religions, so many of them, they think they're the correct ones, and they're looking at the other religion. You're all heretics.
The Eastern religions, well, and I say this at the end of the book, Buddhism, Hinduism is all based on a lack of attachment and, being kind, being present, and yet they are slaughtering each other in Myanmar right now. So, but generally speaking, Hinduism and Buddhism, Jainism, those types of things, were really democratic. Like, you believe what you want to believe, just as long as you're not an asshole. The Western religions is where they came in with the patriarchy and said, no, we're the only ones that are right.
That is fascinating. Well, that's what I'm wondering is like, so what do you want the reader to do? What's the call to action? If you're saying, okay, let's deconstruct these religious beliefs that are so destructive and harmful to the planet, to other humans, to animals and all that, what's the response? What are you hoping that the reader will get out of that?
My punchy answer is for everyone to leave religion.
Short answer, but again,
short answer. Because of the destructive nature of it. I also say that if your church makes you a better person, then fine. But I want people to stop treating people and making policy and making judgments and all of the things that religion brings based on faith in dogma, and instead base it on love. That is
so hard.
Thing.
Yeah, I was
It
going to say,
is hard.
you're
It
asking
is
people to make a big leap there, aren't you? Especially these
Yeah.
entrenched doctrines and dogmas that we hold on to. I mean, it's emotionally threatening, isn't it? When you ask someone to just examine their faith, let alone deconstruct it, man, the reaction you're going to get, the doubling down, the kickback and pushing back and all that, so difficult.
Well, I mean, I have found I started my social media account on this book in 2015. And throughout these years, I have found that I can post anything, really. But the one thing that will piss people off more than anything is love your neighbor. And I just...
How ironic.
Yeah, it was so ironic, especially coming from Christians.
Exactly. It's in the Bible.
Yeah,
Exactly. Jesus said it. Love your neighbor as yourself.
So I hope that dissecting those doctrines and dogma and proving that they're baseless will enable them to go, okay, now I can start looking at things through the lens of love. I was never even taught that. I went to Christian school from 2nd to technically 10th grade. I wasn't taught so much, but my atheist best friend taught me more compassion than I ever learned in the church. She was the one going, Sheri, that's not very nice. And I'd go, oh, I should focus on that.
Maybe I should think about this. Yeah, and there's no ethical demand behind it. No God that's saying the reason you need to be nice is so that, you're going to go to hell, and all this.
No, I don't think I was ever told to be nice in my church.
That's amazing.
Period.
But where's the love? That's what I want to know. Totally. Literally, where is the
love? I mean, and that's what it all boils down to. One of my launch team members, who is an Eastern practitioner, I just love the conversation that she and I had, because she really challenged me on a lot of things within the book. Like, I didn't realize that I was still being dualistic. Like, I was saying, love is good, hate is bad, boom.
Very black and white.
You're still doing this. So, but one of the things that she said, which made me laugh out loud, was you tear apart the Bible and then you use the Bible to justify your points.
Wow.
Isn't that hypocritical?
Yeah. Very incisive comment.
Yeah. And I had already prepared for that, because I needed early on in all of this to be able to decipher. I don't think that anything in its entirety is bad or evil or any of those things. And I use Joel Osteen as an example. I mean, I can't stand that man. I think he stands... I addressed him specifically in the book about he stands for everything against Christ. But once in a while, he still says something good.
Even Joel Osteen.
Right. I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day.
That's true. Even Joel Osteen. That's amazing. You can find something positive from that guy. That's amazing. I have to applaud you for that right there. That takes some hard work, Sheri.
It is rare. It is rare, but there is, like I said, all does not exist in our entire existence. Mm-hmm. So, using the lens of love, you can decipher through all of those things. You can, if you say, I use the example in Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy, it tells us to kill our disrespectful children and do so in a public square if needed to affect other unruly children. Love would never say that. Love would never say, go kill all of these people, rape their women, steal their children, enslave them, and do all of those things. So when you're reading anything, you can say, okay, would love say this? Would I ever do this as a mother to my children? And then you can just take all of that shit out. You may only have 10 pages left of the Bible.
You'd struggle to get 10 pages, I think.
Right? I mean, I'm still a big fan of the Gospels. I still look at Jesus as somebody that I want to be like, someone who endured the problems, that I have endured, the abandonment of friends, the, accusing of baseless accusations, the demand to be religious. And I see how he navigated that. I don't think he's the son of God any less or more than I am a daughter of God. But I no longer believe in a God either.
Mhm.
So, traversing all of those things, I now only believe that what we have called God is what science calls energy. And I define that energy as the energy of love. Either we tap into it or we don't.
It's not the God of the Bible, as you say.
No.
Well, that's an interesting thing, going back to your point about, that's an interesting hermeneutic. Like you're talking about, if he said, I'm going to read the Old Testament, where God, in the narrative anyway, he commands these Israelites to commit genocide and other horrific things, and stone their incorrigible teens and all the rest of it. If you said, okay, would love do that? What does that do to the quote unquote God of the Bible? Because it makes him into a monster. I mean, it's a horrific thing. If that's truly what quote unquote God told these Israelites to do.
Yes, he is. I mean, my brain works in dichotomies. I always want to see what the other side would be thinking or put myself in that position. My girlfriends love it because I can tell them what their husbands are thinking.
Uh-oh.
But in going through this book, I was always like, okay, well, what if there are aliens? What if the ancient aliens theory is true? What if the God of the Old Testament is true? And the decision that I made was, okay, if it's aliens, I'm still okay with love. There's no works in it. If the God of the Old Testament is true, then I want nothing to do with him. I don't want to be in this heaven where he is. I don't want, and I mean, frankly, I would be like, what the fuck? You wanted me to be silent when I was abused. You wanted me to be silent when my son or my grandson was discarded. What the fuck? What about childhood cancer? What about all of those things? And in keeping those things in mind, that reaffirmed the energy of love for me. Because if with child cancer, with children dying, it is our place to be there. We are to bring the love into the situation, not sit on our hands and knees and pray that someone else does. We are to bring that love there, to be the support for the child, to be the support for the family, to give everything everybody needs right there. That is God.
Yeah, whatever God that is, not necessarily the God.
The energy of love. Yeah. I mean, I pissed a lot of people off on my weekly show because I did a show on atheism, and technically I'm an atheist now because I do not agree with any of the religion's gods. They all intersect at love. All of them do. It's really strange. It's love and let go. Evangelicalism made it like us hands over our head, hiding, surrender type thing. This is more of a get into the flow of the universe, get into, find those types of things that are working for you. All of the religions say it in different ways, let go, let God, thy will be done, the flow. They all say it. And then they add all of their other bullshit into it on top of those two things. So that's just pull out those two things and then toss everything else.
It strikes me, I mean, you were talking about your background in comparative religions. When you do compare these religions, you see that pattern, isn't it, where the second you set up that dynamic or that hierarchy, you've got a quote-unquote divine being or God or gods or goddesses or whatever is up there, then suddenly there always seems to come this priestly class, a mediator in between humanity and the quote gods or the pantheon, and then the rules start to come out, the dogma, the doctrines, the theology. That seems to be inherent with human nature, doesn't it? That pattern is repeated culture after culture after culture for millennia. That seems to be a human thing, doesn't it?
Well, I think that our communities are prone to organization, and there are leaders and there are followers. And no religion would have its mark on this planet without politics, because some supreme leader in some way, earthly, obviously, a king, queen, those types of things, because they became that faith is where it got the power. So politics and religion are, even though they say they're not supposed to, and the American Constitution prohibits it, They are completely intertwined. And when you add that power of judgment, when you have all of those things, that's where the problems arise. I talk continuously about how we constantly make people into gods. We put people on these pedestals, and we are all fallible. I mean, according to the Gospels, Jesus was a big old sinner. And we have constructed that into, oh, he was flawless and he was, no, he was killed for sinning. So if back then he was killed for sinning, he became this, our Christ, nothing's changed. We still have those power structures. We still have all of that instead of focusing on love. Because love is hard. It's easy when it's convenient, right? Like you meet someone, you fall in love with them, you love your friends, you love your family. For me, the hardest time is driving. I've gone from screaming every curse word in the curse word dictionary.
You've invented new words.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
A little bit of road rage, eh, Sheri?
And what the hell? I've de-escalated my words.
Slightly.
Yeah. I work on it daily. In fact, just last week, I was like lecturing myself over this because I know that I should do better. I know what I'm supposed to do. And I was still like, you motherfucker.
You cut me off.
Fear. Yeah. I mean, it comes from fear, which is what we base our beliefs on and stuff like that. But a conscious me would be like, they might be having a bad day. They might be old and can't see over the steering wheel. I automatically judge them. I automatically go, you are trying to hurt me. You are trying to kill me. You don't give a fuck about me. And instantly, all of these judgments come in, all based on fear. That is when it is the most difficult to love. But it's also when it's the most important.
Exactly. I mean, road rage, I can totally identify with you. Driving around North Wales, man, it's madness and people shaking their fists and flipping you off and all that. But we never give people the benefit of the doubt. Like you're saying, you're always assuming you're the idiot, you're in the wrong, I was doing everything right, and you cut me off and blah, blah, blah. That's why we need to honk the horn and tap the brakes and flip them off and call them every name in the book. Where's the love? Literally, where is the love?
Yeah.
Hard principle, because I was thinking about that as you were describing the sort of principle of love or hermeneutic of love. What does it actually look like? What would it look like? Would it make someone a better Buddhist, Christian, whatever religion? That you're not necessarily asking someone to abandon their faith, are you? It makes them a better person, a better religious person. What would it look like?
I use the example of the mass shooting in the Amish community years ago and how the Amish responded. The Amish, they lost, I think it was 9 daughters in a shooting in school. And the leaders of the Amish community said, we will not judge this man's family. They attended his funeral. All donations that were sent to the Amish people went to the widow and the murderer's son. They sat with them. They hugged the parents. And they said, yes, what he did was wrong. He hurt us, but that doesn't mean that he was horrible. And they really loved their neighbor through that. I don't know that I could be that big of a person.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. That really struck me as that is what we should grow to be. With TV and electricity, obviously.
Yeah. You need a mobile phone, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't want a horse-drawn wagon.
Yeah. But most of the leaders went to the murderer's funeral. And while we in America, the evangelicals, took to the streets and wanted to see Osama bin Laden's corpse, so those are the dichotomies between what is love and what is ego, what is love and what is power. Even as horrible as bin Laden was, he felt his views were righteous. He felt that his views were defending his country and protecting his people. So there's always going to be justification on either side. But if there's love there, then you don't need the justifications.
Yeah. It's so hard to give someone the benefit of the doubt, isn't it? It's so hard.
It is so hard
to be the bigger person.
It is really, really, really hard.
That's a lesson I learned the hard way when I was ironically the pastor of a church in Portland, Oregon, to learn that lesson of when someone would come at me, judging me or putting me down for something I had allegedly done or not done as the leader of the church, to not to react in that instant moment when I felt like punching them in the face or yelling back, but to stop, give them the benefit. They're probably having a bad day. This is saying more about them than it is about whatever issue they claim to have with me. But it's so hard. I think I've forgotten all those lessons I learned when I was a pastor. But you had to, because if you blew up at everybody who came at you, you'd probably end up getting fired from your job and it wouldn't work. So yeah, it's a very difficult thing to do, isn't it?
So in 2016, I quit my job to focus solely on the book, and then my life hit rock bottom over the last 7 years. This year's been remarkably different, obviously, because the book is coming out and all of those things. But my life really funneled me into situations where I was tested. I could either be a hypocrite or I could talk what I'm, do what I'm saying.
Walk the walk.
Yeah. And hypocrisy to me is probably, I still use the word sin, but the greatest evil of those types of things. So that is one thing I really, really try to avoid at all costs. So I move to LA, and I move into a building that I call a combination between Melrose Place and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay.
There were three legitimately mentally ill people in this building of 9 apartments. And this one guy decided that he wanted to assault me and my dogs because I have pin legs and he doesn't like my laugh. So he sprayed me and my dogs with Raid.
Good God.
It burned all of my sinuses. All of the sinus cavities. It is a felony here.
Assault.
Yeah, noxious.
Yeah.
It's just abuse of assault, something like that. So when I could finally leave the house and breathe normally without crying because every breath hurt, and I definitely attribute it to my dog dying within 6 months of that, I went to the police station to file a report because the cops never showed up that night. And I'm filling out the paperwork, and even the cops were caught off guard at what a severe felony this was. And they said, okay, sign this. We're going to go pick him up. And it's a mandatory 2-year minimum. And at that point, I burst into tears because I knew this man is 85 years old. And if I put this man in prison, he was going to die. Mm-hmm. And I sat there crying, going, I can't do this. No, I have to do this.
Yeah, that's the right thing to do. Yeah, he assaulted me.
Him, how dare he do this? And on the other hand, what would love do? So I really struggled with, I should love myself, and, he deserves this and all of this types of things. So then I had a really good idea. I asked the police what was my limit of statute of limitations on this charge, and they said 2 years. So I said, okay, that's what I needed. So I still have the paperwork, and I showed my landlord and said, if he approaches me again, or if he attacks me in any way again, he will die in prison. Now this man, again, he's mentally ill. He's old. The first time I left the door open for him, I held the door as he was coming through, I thought, this is what I'm supposed to do, and he just looked at me like, who the fuck are you? I didn't think about it. I was just naturally, was going to leave the door open because he was walking through. Only his reaction to me caused me to think, oh yeah, right, you're an asshole. I shouldn't be doing this. But I felt so much pride that even after he had done that, I had set the boundaries. Do not mess with me again. I will forgive you on this, but we have established boundaries and you could end up dying in jail. It's changed everything. It really has. And I think I de-escalated the situation, avoided more chaos. And also, while some of the tenants judged me as far as being, oh, well, you're just, this love shit's all bullshit. He should be in jail, whatever. I feel good about what I did. Granted, we still got 6 months on this. He messes with me again.
Yeah, he could still end up.
Yeah, there are firm boundaries now. And he's done this to every single person. He's lived here like 26 years. So he has literally attacked every single person in this building. And I, the one who's preaching love, are the only one that got him to stop.
That is an amazing story. What I can't help but think, you were talking earlier about, you can't help but project your evangelical background onto that. If I was here in that situation, if you were an evangelical, I would have said, of course, Sheri, that you're forgiving him because God requires you to. That's what the Bible says. I can't help but play those tapes. You're not doing it necessarily because it's the right thing to do. It's because God requires you to be forgiving and loving.
And that's not the case.
That's a completely different motivation behind such behavior, which, like I said, most people would be like, hey, fuck him. We're putting him in prison. I don't care if he's 85. He assaulted me, and that's it. He's gone. So he gets what he deserves.
Yeah. And what happened to turn the other cheek? What happened to love those, that love your enemies?
Yeah. Who spitefully use you. Yeah. Pray for your enemies. Forgive those.
Yeah. Maybe, I'm not I was his victim for 1 hour, but I'm not his victim, so there is no need for retaliation. I established the boundaries. I healed within a couple days. Like I said, my dog was 15. So that, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances that I can bring into play because I am looking for a reason to love. And when you are kind and generous and because you fear hell, it's not authentic, it's bullshit. And it'll always come back to justifying you being an asshole. But if you are doing it because you really want to be a loving person, because there's nothing wrong with that, you can't find any fault in that, then that's why you do it. Not because someone demanded you to. That's just authoritarian. Again,
coercion.
I would punch the OT God in his face and say, I don't want anything to do with you.
Exactly. That's kind of a similar journey to the one I've been on for years. Maybe not without the love piece, especially when you talked about road rage,
It's hard.
It's so hard. But to think, okay, it's a completely different way of thinking about treating other people, treating the planet, like you said, this example of the man who assaulted you, a knee-jerk reaction. But yeah, screw him. He's done this to me. He's going to prison. I don't care that he's that old. He should have been in jail a long time ago. But that's a hard thing to do. It's got to be I don't know if I could put myself in your shoes if I would have done the same thing. I don't know. It would have to happen to try it out.
Well, like I said, I kind of view it as a final exam. I dare I say that, okay, this is going to, I'm going to bring to you the worst and see, you don't want to be a hypocrite. Let's see. There was a point that night when I was waiting for the police to arrive that I kept hearing, love your neighbor, love your neighbor, love your neighbor. I'm like, no, fuck that.
Not him. Yeah.
As I'm trying to clear my sinuses of all of these toxic, because and I'm screaming at him going, why are you doing this to me? And he says, because I have pin legs. It's like,
it's crazy.
Are you fucking insane? And yeah, he is.
Probably is. Yeah.
Yeah. He really
clearly got mental health issues.
He actually, either that night or the next day, was carted off by 5 different police officers out of the grocery store down the street because he attacked the manager there. So, and then he said, well, I've been on different meds, they're really messing with me, which also gave me the perspective, again, it's not me. But when we look at ourselves as victims and we look at, I'm not saying we're not victims. I was a victim for a really long time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But when we place judgment as a victim, saying it's all about me, that's when the violence comes. That's when the retaliation comes. When you stop thinking about you and the effects of, just solely you, like we said earlier with the cars, maybe they're sick. Maybe their kids, they're rushing because their kid's in trouble.
Yeah.
No.
Could be going to the hospital. Could be anything.
Yeah. Our initial reaction is me, because again, that's fear. That's, trying to protect ourselves. But the moment we step out of ourselves and go, okay, what about them? That's what makes it easy to love. Easier. Because again, the other examples I use are a breakup in a relationship. That's another really tough time to be loving. And the other is when you get passed over for a promotion at work that you thought you deserved.
That's a hard one.
Yeah. I mean, those are some really hard times in our life where we have to get out of that rage somehow and say, okay, getting fired from my job years ago was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I didn't know it at the time. I was angry. I was, bullied, all of these things. But it did set me on a path where I needed to be.
It's true. Yeah. I've just gone through a job change. I left a job that was very stressful and toxic environment. But my girlfriend, I'm glad that she's a very positive person, and she says to me that kind of thing, like, maybe this will turn out to be the best thing. I've just started a new job. Maybe you got to think about, because I've been teaching for years, and this is a job where I'm not doing teaching. I'm kind of going back on the tools and I'm doing regular work again, And she says, maybe you got to think about, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you. You don't necessarily see it now, but there's something going on here. Just give it some time. Don't be so stressed out. It's hard though, isn't it? Because, again, I'm going back, and I say this to her, going back to when I was an evangelical, all this stuff happens for a reason. God is testing my faith, and there's got to be something behind this. You're not saying though, there's a quote God that put that old man in your path, and it was to test your faith, Sheri, and to see how you'd respond and all that. What is that force? You said it was sort of unconditional love. What would you describe it as?
Yeah, I truly believed that everything happens for a reason. And because I'm a very introspective person, I struggle with dropping that. But I also hear the really harmful things that were said in religion. My mother said one time that the Holocaust happened because it was payback for killing Jesus. And when someone said to me, challenging that everything happens for a reason, what about the Holocaust? And I went to regurgitate what my mother said, I stopped and was like, holy, that's a horrible thing to say. She also said that we had more cancer than the rest of the planet because of our slavery issues. And the only reason that tobacco gives us cancer is because of the slaves. So again, it's all that payback. I believe in karma. I really do. I think that is, it's Newton's third law. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. So we can take a God and someone who has, puppet strings on all of us and still say that, even a river has bumpy moments. Even, an elephant struggles and has days. We can take the God out of it and say, this is just life. I can tell you that now when things go to shit, it's more of like, okay, well, perfect example is this week. On Friday, on Wednesday, my laptop broke. On Friday, I got a new one, and that one broke. And then on Saturday, my desktop died. All while I am planning a giant brigade against these locked door churches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Worst possible time.
Waiting on getting some technology so I can send these people emails and say, how dare you?
I'm going to rip you to shreds for this.
Rip you to shreds. So then I was like, and even my friends are joking. It's like, this is really weird, for everything to break. And I was like, there's a reason. I may never know, but there's a reason. And like on Sunday, when I started to calm down a little bit, I realized that I was no longer going to be attacking them. I was going to be able to go with logic, use their dogma against them, use everything that they preach. I mean, the church that we went to yesterday says on their website that they have 4 days a year that they do community or outreach. Mm-hmm. And all of the pictures were of them planting flowers.
Okay.
When we pull up to the church, they have posters everywhere that says outrageous generosity.
Oh, come on. You couldn't make this stuff up, Sheri.
I couldn't make it up.
Planting flowers.
Yeah, it's a
outrageous
person evangelical mega church, and their doors were locked.
You literally could not get in the place.
No. So, now the video is of that. So, it is of saying, how dare you do this? Mm-hmm. And in the process of all of my technology shutting down, I am going to be far more effective with these emails because they're not going to be so emotional. I'm going to get to where I need to be with them instead of raging and saying, you motherfuckers, I'm coming after you. Yeah. That wouldn't fix anything. But now that I'm more calm, I can say, this is, what about this verse? What about this verse? And that's one of the things initially that I realized with my book is that I was going to be able to speak their language. I was going to be able to throw their doctrine back at them and say, this isn't what you're doing. Mm. And again, doing that invalidates them. So if your church makes you a better person, not feel better, literally a more loving person, then praise God.
More power to you.
Yeah. I say that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, exactly.
If not, if they're not welcoming the homeless, I heard, well, we can't let the homeless in here. They might destroy something. Like, what, your fucking museum?
Exactly.
Yeah. What is this? So, if the church is really doing a good thing, I think they can remain viable and are a worthy institution. Generally speaking, that's not the case in the majority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it hasn't been the case for a very long time.
Oh, millennium.
Yeah, not just a few years. This is going back thousands and thousands, Yeah, like I said, other religions as well. Well, it sounds to me like, you're describing your experiences of the guy that assaulted you and things like that and what happened to your computers and all the rest, the technology that failed you. It's very empowering what you're advocating. It seems like you've gotten this sense of release and liberation and freedom by choosing to opt for the love angle instead of being so bitter and angry. It's easy to get twisted and wrapped around the axle about every little thing and rant and rave and all that. It's so hard though to walk away from it and just say, okay, what would love do? I mean, that's a fascinating challenge, I think, for any of us.
Yeah. And like I said, I still struggle. And I think we will always struggle with this because if there is anything holy, it is love. And what makes it holy is that, see, and I get stuck in these dichotomies again. It is superior. Even though I'm not supposed to say a superior and a negative, I don't think you can err if you love.
Can't
go
wrong.
No, there may be consequences. Your love may be rejected. You may be taken advantage of. People might assault you just because they think that you're weak. I have been misconstrued for weakness several times over the last 7 years, and where I said, do not mistake, mm-hmm. My willingness to work with you with weakness. So there is a balance you have to have because you still have to love yourself to not be a victim, but it will never be wrong to love. Mm. The reactions to that love from others may be wrong, but loving, it will never be wrong.
Well, I can't wait to read your book when it does come out because it sounds like a fascinating way to live your life in such a way that is empowering, it is freeing, yet without all the strictures of the dogma. And I can remember as an evangelical, like I said before, the reason I did the things I did, quote unquote, lovingly to my neighbors. For example, when I lived in Portland in the States, I built relationships with my neighbors that lived around us in our neighborhood But the reason I did that, and this is a cringy thing, but the reason I did that, quote unquote, loving thing, helping them with their projects, because I'm a builder by trade. So, I have tools and I had a workshop and I would build things, and they all knew that. But it was to build relationships for the purpose of evangelizing them.
Yeah.
That's what it was about.
Which is manipulation.
Yeah, there were strings attached. I wasn't just being a good neighbor and a nice person and helpful and all those things because I could. It was because I'm thinking, I need to build a relationship so I can tell you about my Christian faith and hope to win you to the faith. So yeah, there's all these hidden agendas and strength. I want to do away with all that. And it sounds like your book is something that, would allow a person to do that.
If there's an agenda behind anything, then it's manipulation, right? I mean, if you do anything good for something and expect reciprocity in any way, then is it really a good act? Is it really, is it really love? I mean, I discuss sex in the book, about how that's been demonized and all of those things. And I address how, yes, sex can be a really bad thing, but only when your motivation and your agenda supersedes that of your partner's. When your agenda means more, that's when rape occurs. When you lie to get ass.
Yeah.
You pretend to be someone you're not just to get laid. That's when sex is bad. And it doesn't make sex bad. It makes the people wrong in doing so.
Exactly, yeah.
So you can take the most beautiful thing on the planet and still make it evil. But that doesn't mean that thing is evil. It means that our judgments of it are, I mean, I still think sex and screaming, "Oh God," is the closest I've ever been, And the church says that's the most evil thing there is. So, just addressing those types of things, I hope will free people from those types of things where they go, oh, the shame, the unworthiness, all of that.
Well, that sounds like an absolutely fascinating book. I was going to say, remind us again of the title. Where can people get it? And then I was thinking too, how can people find you on social media if they want to connect with you?
Okay, so the title is We Have Ruined God, My Journey Out of Religion and Into Unconditional Love. My website is sheripallas.com, and it's SHERIPALLAS. Go there. I started a book club that will start. Actually, the social media is live now, so anyone can go in and talk about the book. It's a private social media. We're also doing a follow-up course with things like this of how to implement day-to-day things to get over it. And I've got some really great guests that are coming on to expand and stuff on the book. So yeah, we're going to do a whole community so we can try and talk through this and figure out how to get through the road rages, get through, the breakups and those types of things while trying to focus on love.
Mm-hmm. And without all the dogmas and strictures of religion attached to it. Yeah, that's such a debilitating thing. And it reminds me, obviously, as we've been talking, how pervasive religion is. It's affected every area of our lives, hasn't it? We still can't escape those categories, the tapes that play, even as you were describing things. And I'm thinking, like you said, with my evangelical mind, and so, my God, I've still got work to do. We still have work to do, Sheri. So hopefully your book will help us to
We're still alive. Yeah, as long as we stay alive, we've got work to do. I think the first step is taking people off of platforms and pedestals and stuff like that. Realizing that we're all just human and we don't have the answers, will help a little bit and maybe take some of the stress off of us too.
That's true. And obviously you can buy the book. It's going to be on Amazon. Everywhere else you buy. Yeah, it'll be everywhere.
Bookstores, everything as of May 9th.
Wow. Well, I wish you all the best, Sheri. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you've got stuff to do, but let's keep in touch. I want to see how your book does. We'll touch base in the future and chat again.
Oh, Clint, I love talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.